people treat their job, their career, how they feed their family for the rest of their lives as a hobby. And they're not obsessive about getting great at it. And it's like, we're jealous and envious of wildly successful people, especially athletes. And it's like, well, why did they get to where they're at? Not accidentally.
Welcome to another episode of The Drive. Tune in for everything you need to know to stay in the know regarding the automotive industry. Here's your host, Jason Harris.
What's up? What's up, brother? How you doing?
How's it going, Mike? Good to see you.
You too.
I mean, for everybody out there that's watching right now or listening, how did you kind of get started in this business? What's that origin story for Mike?
Yeah, so I grew up in the car business. My dad was kind of a mechanic by trade, and when I was a kid, we grew up, very blue collar, Detroit. My dad didn't have a job when I was a kid. He would buy cars for cheap, fix them up, and sell them. And I was a little boy that would, I was 3-4 years old holding the orange shop light for my dad to work on cars, and then put them in the front yard and sell them. I mean, it was like started from the bottom. Now we're here, kind of story, right? Yeah. And my dad got into selling cars as well, and then I ended up working with my dad at his dealership until I went into the Marine Corps. So like everything from painting cars and pulling weeds to filling out buyer's guides and key tags, getting titles, going to the DMV to do all that kind of stuff, and selling cars. I think I sold my first car at a dealership when I was 14. I mean, I was literally a kid. So my dad worked 6-7 days a week when I was a kid, and if I didn't go to the dealership with him, I would have never saw my dad either. So it was kind of like that got ingrained in my head. My mom also worked 6 days a week, so like there wasn't going to be anybody home anyway. So I would every weekend, really, I go to work with my dad. Summertime, 6 days a week, I worked as a kid, as like a 10-year-old kid with my dad at the dealership.
That's cool.
So I didn't know anything else. I really went to the Marine Corps to get a break, and 9/11 happened shortly after I joined the Marine Corps. I was going out to live in California and shoot guns and work out.
So I was going to say, when did you sign up?
In 2000. I joined in 2000, so then shortly after I joined the Marine Corps, 9/11 happened, and then I ended up not living in California and getting paid to work out and shoot guns, but actually, I did 2 tours in Iraq.
Wow.
And then came back home. I met my wife when I just got back from the Marines. She was from New York, actually, and I thought I was going to get out and end up, going to New York and, going to college and figuring out a different job, a different career, but I ended up getting into the car business right after I got out again. Moving up the ladder.
Because it was already in you. It was in your blood, right?
It was my DNA.
It was in your DNA.
It was in my DNA. So my brother-in-law, who's actually in the car business as well and still owns a dealership to this day, he got me into the car business again when I got out. And I worked my way from, BDC, running a BDC, to selling cars and running dealerships and, that side of the business. And I've just been in it ever since.
That's cool.
I love the industry, and I've hopped out a couple times to do stuff on the finance company side of the business.
But then it just sucks you back.
It sucks me back in, and now I love what I do now on the software side, right? Because it's like you can help equip people with tools to help them be more successful. Yes. It's just a tool. There's a lot of software companies out there that like to tell you if you buy their tool, it's just going to automatically sell you cars, and it's like life is easy.
A lot of dealers still think that, right? But a tool's only as good as how well someone uses it. And that's all it is, right? Like a rifle is only a rifle until someone touches it.
That's it, yeah. It's the same exact thing, man. A hammer's a hammer, right? You gotta
and it depends on what you're doing with it.
Yeah, and I think right now, especially in the digital retailing era, I'll call it right now, is there's all these, conversations about like, I put this buy now button on my website and then I just magically sell cars. So it doesn't happen like that. There's a lot of work that has to go on. And again, a tool is just a tool. So I think I enjoy what I do now because I help provide the industry with tools that equip people to provide a better customer experience, which is really what we're lacking right now, is customer experience.
Well, okay, let's talk about that because I love the word experience. The funny thing is, if you were to take all of the dealerships' Google reviews out there and combine them together, there's one word that sticks out and is used more often than any other word out there, and it's not a 4-letter word. Well, it depends on the dealership. But it's the word experience.
Right.
Because it goes both ways. It was a great experience. It was a horrible experience. It was a fun experience.
It was an
experience. So I think when dealerships right now, they're looking at technology.
Right.
And unfortunately, I see what they're trying to do is like, it's kind of like taking a square peg and sticking it into a round hole.
Right.
You know, they're looking at just this piece of technology, and they're thinking it just fits into their daily operations.
Right.
What they don't realize is that the technology is more of a process. The tech supports the process.
That's it.
So it's like how the dealership needs to really look at their process and embrace this new process, not
Right.
try to make something fit into this round hole.
And their people too, right? So
Yes,
this is the
perfect,
thing that I
yes.
think is often overlooked, right? And I use the really simple analogy of, and a lot of my buddies that I grew up with are in the construction business, right? So I
Yep.
use this as an analogy, is that if you had the wrong people that didn't know how to build a house and you gave them all the best possible tools on the market, I mean, you spent all the money in the world, and they had the air guns and they had all this kind of stuff that should allow them to build, but they don't want to do the job. They weren't properly trained how to do it. They don't have the right incentive in place to do the job, right? Like, they're not going to build you a good house. They may not even finish a house. And that's what happens in our industry, right? Is we tend to overpromise this career of uncapped earning potential.
6-digit income.
Right, yeah.
Right.
And it's like, well, we don't say that after 3 years and after you get repeat and referral business
Yep,
and all this.
exactly.
It's just so we get people with this expectation that they're going to come in and that every time that you talk to somebody on the phone or in person, they're going to buy a car. We don't say, look, you're going to talk to 9 people, you're going to sell the 10th person a car,
Yep.
right? Like, we don't set the expectations, right, of what work is necessary, and we'll do training. And what happens, I think, is we can train people how to do all these things, right? But if the expectation isn't that you're going to have to fail more
Yes.
than you succeed, that's when we're going to have a problem. And I think that's what happens a lot.
Well, and I think, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but I imagine that is probably a core lesson of yours being in the Marines.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, without a doubt.
Everything's a process.
everything
And
is
it's
a
like,
process.
There's, and it's not an option. See, this is the other thing that
just
drives
do
me
it.
nuts.
You have to do it.
Is that, I was talking to a dealership the other day who just bought into a digital retailing tool, and I'm asking how there goes, and they're like, I'm like, well, what's going on? It's like the employee's usage of the tool is all over the place. You got 1 or 2 guys that are crushing it, and you got a couple guys that are, and then you got one that's like fighting it. I'm like, well, what's wrong with them? They're like, well, they don't want to use it. Why is it even an option? You
Right.
know? In the Marines, did you have an option?
No, you didn't. And it's it's a command and control kind of environment, right? So it's a lot different. And I always say in the Marine Corps, you sign a contract, right? And the USMC stood for you signed a MF and contract, right? So it's a little bit different because you had to do it. Well, now in the car business or in any business, right? You hire an employee,
Yep.
and they don't have to do what you tell them to do. Now, if they want to stay employed, in some cases, they probably should. It's a good idea.
Yep.
But I'm a people person and a leadership person, and I think, you have to inspire people and give them a whiff them, right? A what's in it for me to do it.
Yep.
And now, if you've done everything you can to provide clear expectations, you've provided them a what's in it for me, you've given them the training, the support to do this, and they still don't want to do it, you got to make the decision then at that point.
Well, you got to get the employee to own your why.
Right.
Right? Like, I think as an industry, we're pretty good about knowing, well, we all know what we do, right?
Right.
We sell cars and we service them and we sell parts, you
Right.
know? For the most part, I think as an industry, we do a pretty good job of training how we go about doing that.
Right.
But I don't see a whole lot of spending time with the employees and going over why we do it the way that we do it.
Right.
So it's like, how can you expect an employee to embrace a piece of technology when they don't necessarily know or embrace your why in buying and signing up for that piece of technology in the first place?
Right. Like, what's the purpose of it? And I think the why behind it. There's a gentleman named Simon Sinek, right? The Start
Yep.
With Why is a book I read a long time ago, and it was really good. But it's,
I think I listened to that one.
it's a really good one. If you haven't read it, it's one that it's worth reading or listening to on an audiobook too. But people really need to understand the why behind why they're doing something, why they're doing something a certain way. Why do you go to work every day? I had a post this morning before NADA, which was like, why are you here?
I saw it. That was perfect.
You need to know why you're here, because otherwise, I just see so many people that walk around aimlessly, and it's like, hey, so what brings you out?
Looking for that shiny thing.
What's going to grab my attention, right? And I'm waiting for somebody to sell me something that and this is funny. As I worked for a gentleman who's a very successful guy for many decades. He's a billionaire.
Yeah.
And I worked for him on the dealership side and on the finance company side for a long time. And when I worked for him on the dealership side, we'd go out to NADA and he would give me advice. He'd say, Michael, be really careful when you come out here. He goes, because there's a bunch of solutions looking for a problem.
Yeah, oh my gosh, that's the best way to describe it. I love that.
So everybody creates these solutions, and they say, you know what, we got to make sure we tell these dealers they have a problem. We got to let them know they have a problem that only we can solve, right? And it's like, you need to check yourself and say, like, do I even have this problem? And sometimes there's cases that you don't realize you do, and I give a lot of people credit for that because you are solving a unique problem. But for the most part, you need to know when you come out to an NADA or a digital dealer, or you go to any kind of conference, right, is like, why am I going here? And it's the same thing with an employee of why do you go to work every day? Like one is, hey, I want to make income, I want to provide for my family.
Well, that's another point, and it's finding out what your employees' whys are. You know, and it's different for everybody. And maybe the guy wants to move out of his mom's basement. Maybe the guy needs to pay for his daughter's tuition. You know, or maybe he's a service advisor because he wants to be a service manager. You know,
you have to ask.
Yeah,
it sounds so basic, but you have to ask.
Well, how can we get them to believe into our why if we don't intimately know their why? And here's actually, and I kind of struggle why dealerships don't do that. You know, and I've come to this, and I want you to get your thought and opinion on that. Is there is a level of expectation, all right, when you have knowledge. So once you know something about somebody, you know, it's now kind of your responsibility. Like, you're responsible for knowing this information now. You know, so the service advisor tells you that, you know, he's a service advisor because he wants to be a service manager. Well, aren't you? You're going to be now kind of responsible to, now since you know his why and you want him to follow your why, then you better figure out how the heck that guy's going to become a service manager.
So, like, I'm a big believer in personal responsibility, right? And as a leader, you've got much more personal responsibility. And oftentimes we think of the hierarchy of any business, right? And I don't even like to just say automotive, right? But in any business, there's a hierarchy. And we often think of, you know, the owner, the president, the CEO is at the top, and then the layers go beneath them, and then the ground level employees at the bottom. But it's the opposite, right?
Oh,
like
100%.
it's an inverted triangle, right? And it's you've got to be at
You're
the bottom.
the bottom of that, holding it all up.
Right, and it's all the responsibility falls on you. So you have to work to make sure that everybody else on top of you is aligned with what you're doing. You can't just expect them to say, like, hey, I'm going to tell you the goal this month is to sell 200 cars, and then I expect all you guys to figure out how to sell 200 cars. I'll see you at the end of the month. Yeah, it sounds silly. That happens at a lot of places.
It happens in a lot of places, and I also find. So let's get to digital retailing because I do. This is perfect. We're in a Tesla,
right?
So let's talk tech.
Yeah,
this makes perfect, right? Digital retailing. The way the dealerships and a lot of the sales managers I'm talking about is that, you know, their dealer principals or GMs are going to events like this, and they're coming back with this tool. And the way that the dealer is explaining the tool to the employees is that we're going to sell more cars.
Right.
Like it's a magic bullet. It's a diet pill. You know, you want to lose 20 pounds fast, you want to sell 20 cars more, here you go. Stick that tool in, right? But it's the why behind it is more for the consumer, less for the dealership and for the employee. So it's like, how do we make sure that when people are looking at digital retailing that they understand that this system is, yes, it assists you and helps you, but it's designed for the consumer.
Right.
Everything about it's for the consumer.
Right. So I'm a big believer in this. It's change management. Is you have to understand that you're changing a process. You're changing the status quo way somebody's been doing something, right? Yep. And the language that I use a lot is they say it's got to be a pull versus a push. So if you come to a conference like this, or if you have a meeting or a web meeting with a vendor and they sell you, if you're the owner, the GM, the whoever, right, and they sell you on a product, for you to then say, so let it be written, so let it be done, you guys are now going to use this tool, you're going to have pushback. And there's a saying that I've used a lot called malicious obedience. They're like, okay, I'm going to do exactly what you tell me to do. I'm going to do exactly how they train me to do it, even if it fails. And even if I see a way that I could adapt to this and make it work better, I'm not giving you any feedback. And I'm just going to say, I'll prove you right or wrong.
I see it all the time, like all the time.
Yep.
You know, I have, out of all the clients we have, I think we have roughly about 25 or 30 of them that are using a digital retailing product. And it's all different types of companies, right?
Yep.
And I would say maybe two, where it's like I can go in and talk to the staff and I ask the staff, so, you know, why are you guys using this? And the answer was, because it's great for the customer.
Right.
But instead, most of the other whys, that when I asked the staff, why are you using this? Because my sales manager told me I had to.
Dad told me because I said so, right? I mean, that's really what it boils down to. And it's like, it takes a little bit more time to do it this way, but it's a lot more likely to stick and be successful. Is that, let's just say that you want to implement a digital retail solution or anything, right? But we'll use digital retail because that's what we're talking about. A digital retail solution into your business. Mm-hmm. You can either do your demo and then tell everybody they're using it, or you can probably take a look at that and take a look at one or two other options, get an idea of what you want to do, and then say, hey guys, look, we're evaluating digital retailing options, right?
Yes.
I want your feedback on what do you think is going to work best for you to be successful here, right? Allow them to go through a demo. You don't have to do any more work, these vendors do, right?
Yeah,
guys like me, right?
Let them do it, right?
They have to go do this work.
Perceived value,
Right.
Because I love perceived value, like, because it's not real. It's just
Perception.
It's whoever that person, however they see it. So the dealer principal perceives the value in the solution one way. The general manager will perceive the value in one way. But it's like we don't seem to spend enough time talking to the people who are actually going to use it.
Right.
All right. And it's like, do they have the perceived value behind the product?
Right, and if they do, here's the funny thing is that if you give them a couple options and you allow everybody to decide what they're going to use, kind of come to a quorum, what's going to happen is that then they're going to want to prove you right that they made a good decision.
That's
Now they're going to want to say, see, we are responsible. We made the right decision, especially that guy who maybe was a salesperson who wants to be a sales manager.
Yes.
He's going to be the leader. Hey, guys, here's what we got to do it. And they're going to start to get together and try to figure out how do we make this work versus, hey, man, this is a threat. They're trying to sell cars online. They're trying to phase us out. You know, you have the union meeting. Everybody's on the side of the building smoking cigarettes, talking about how they're going to sabotage this last initiative that the GM wanted to roll out. And it's like, it happens across the country.
I think you've seen the same meetings I have. I'm pretty
Yeah.
confident we have.
Yeah, it doesn't matter if you're in, you know, Montana or Minnesota or Michigan, right? It's the same. Everybody, well, it's different here. Our store's different. It's like, guess what? Through my time working in dealerships and consulting with dealerships over the last, you know, all of my adult life pretty much, it doesn't matter if you're in California, Florida, and I've never been to Canada in a dealership, but I'm imagining they're probably pretty similar in the U.S. and Canada, right?
A few. Yeah, they're
pretty similar, right? Yeah. So it's like, the problems are the same, the people problems are the same, and you just have to, you know, realize that, I think, and you solve the problems a lot easier.
There's 3 reasons why someone ultimately chooses to do business with you, right? Ironically, it's the same 3 reasons why they choose not to do business with you too. People, product, and the operational experience.
Right.
You know, the consumer just uses the words experience.
Right.
But when they use the word experience, what they're really saying to you is the processes that you designed made me feel this way.
Right.
Right?
Right.
And that's the approach I think we have to take. We have to be developing these processes not necessarily for our own selfish needs, but when we develop a process for the consumer, right, we're the ones that actually end up reaping the benefits of it.
Right.
But there's a good chunk of people in our industry that are doing a good job of that.
I think
but
so.
then there's still a lot that are fighting it.
Yeah.
And like, no, my customer's got to go this direction.
Road to the sale.
Right.
You got to go the road to the sale, right? It's the same for everybody. It's like everybody's journey is different. What everybody wants to accomplish is different. And the funny thing is that I think as an industry, we've solved the wrong problem, right?
Yes.
As we've said, customers want to buy a car the way they want to buy something on Amazon, right?
Yep.
And it's not, because if you look at it, there's 2 ways that we've tried to solve this. One is all this technology, and it's kind of the Carvana-esque approach of like doing most of this online. The other is the manual way, and if you go into major markets like New York, this is common. Even in Michigan, I've seen this pop up more often than not, is brokers are popping up a lot. So people are saying, I don't want to deal with the headache of buying a car.
Yes.
So it's not necessarily, it goes back to what you said earlier, it's an experience problem. It's not I want to buy it online, because if you think about this, it's like, if you asked a customer, would you want to go through researching a car for 14 hours on average, which is what all the studies say right now is 14 hours. Do you want to go through all this research? Do you want to go through and desk your own deal, appraise your own car, do all this stuff yourself, or would you rather have somebody do all of it for you and then help you? And if you ask the questions, we say, well, no, I'd rather have somebody else do it for me. The problem is that we've done such a horrible job with customer experience, and we've built this like distrust of our industry and everybody in it, that people are like, well, I don't trust you're going to give me a good experience, and 2, I don't trust that you're going to give me a fair deal.
Well, because you have to understand, like, the experience is for the customer. The experience is not for us. So you know, that's the very first thing. We have to change our whole mentality around it. You know, it's like, I also think, you know, people seem to think this experience is like this tangible thing. Like it's this like physical thing. Like, I'll put a coffee shop in my dealership. That's an experience, right?
Right. We saw that in the 2000s.
Remember that?
Yeah.
Remember that was a big push. Now I got massage chairs.
Right.
Oh, we got some dealerships got movie theaters now in them too.
Yeah.
Little private screening rooms and stuff like that. That's that experience. Those are cool. I mean,
Right.
there could be a small element to I had this great experience there, but
Right.
it's not the experience. And I find the reason why we're struggling to get to developing the experience is because of the lack of goals and objectives.
Yeah, that's true.
You feel the same?
I think that's definitely one of the data points is the lack of goals and objectives, and it's kind of the why. You go back to the why, and it's kind of the what, right? You've got to who, what, why, where, when, how, right? You know,
Yeah.
these things. It's like you go back to the very basics of anything, and it's like, you know, what are we trying to accomplish here, right? Like clearly define it, and I think, you know, goals, a clear vision of where you're trying to get to, right? So first you need to have a goal of like, where are we trying to get to? The vision is, you know, how do we get there, right? And then the plan is the execution, right? Like that's what we need to get to. And I think absent that, you just have people that are like, we're trying to sell cars. So they just know like the goal is to sell cars, right?
Well, I can't tell you, if I had a nickel for every time I asked somebody what their goal and objective was and the response was sell more cars, I wouldn't have to be doing this right now.
Absolutely.
Like, it's kind of crazy. Like, that's our default. Let's just sell more cars. Okay, so let's get a little more granular, right? Let's say we do want to sell more cars. Well, we have to define the audience that's going to help us actually even meet the goal and objective.
Right.
And then we need to develop out the processes for that audience, not for me, but for that audience, because I need to remove all that friction. So it's like we seem to get to the point where, let's say some dealerships will actually define the goal and objective, very granular, exactly. I want to sell this many RAV4s, this many of this, okay, that's cool. Then reverse back, define the audience, and then it's like it stops.
Right.
It's like, well, we're going to keep doing it the way we've been doing it.
So it's funny. I had very lucky, very blessed in my life to have some good mentors and people that gave me good advice, right?
Yeah.
And when I was a young man, kind of fresh out of the Marine Corps, selling cars, I had a gentleman that gave me the advice, as he just said, you know, if you treat people better than anybody else has treated them, everything else is going to take care of itself. If you just focus on that, everything else will take care of itself. Now, mind you, I was selling cars in Detroit, rough customers, very rough credit, challenged area, right? So people are used to getting beat up, treated like crap, and this is, you know, going on 15 years ago. So this is where things were, you know, the technology wasn't out there, the transparency wasn't out there, wasn't expected. If you had challenged credit, you probably spent half a day or a day at a dealership, right? I treated every person that I talked to like $1 million, like they had $1 million, and like they had perfect credit, and I served them. I had a servant mentality with these people.
Yeah, that's the key.
I consistently sold 40 cars a month. And not without trying. It was a process, right?
Well, of course, that's still a lot of work.
But I just looked at it like that, is everything else will take care of itself if I treat them better than anybody could treat them. And no matter what, there was one time that I can remember we had about 11 salespeople on the showroom floor, and there was a guy that came up on a bicycle.
Yes.
Okay. You can imagine what this looked like, right? Everybody scurried,
I've
right?
had this, yep.
It looked like roaches, right?
Yep.
They ran away, and it always stuck in my head is treat everybody better than they've ever been treated, right? And the rest will take care of itself. I walked out there, and at the time the GMC Envoys were like, you know, they're just the bomb, right? Everybody loved them, and this guy comes up on a bicycle, and you know, doesn't look like he has a dollar to his name. He walks up to a GMC Envoy, and it had the TVs in it, leather. I mean, it was just the Mac Daddy version of this truck, right? All these guys, I can tell the guys are outside smoking cigarettes, laughing at me like, you think this guy can even buy this? You're wasting your time, right? And I went to the guy, we desk the deal, we come out, and I was like, hey man, you know, great news, we got you approved on this is all set, you know, just to drive this home today, you only need, you know, $4,582, and you know, your payments, you know, $430 a month, you can drive it home. The guy goes, oh, you're kidding me. And I can hear the guy say, I told you so. This guy couldn't buy anything, get wasted his time. He's like, I've been saving for a year. And he pulls out a wad of cash. He goes, I've got $4,300, man. I can't buy it with that. And I was like, went back to the desk, and I'm like,
Pretty sure I can do something here.
We figured it out. I sold this guy a car, and I made a biggest commission I probably ever made to that point on this deal. And it was awesome. And it just reinforced that with me forever of like, don't ever judge anybody. Like, if you had a bad day, wipe it away. If you don't feel good, wipe it away. Just treat everybody like $1 million. You'll get referrals.
Well,
life is good.
That's the definition of being kind.
Right.
So I had a salesperson come up to me recently, and I may have posted a video about it. But he was, I don't know, felt like he was a little beaten down, right? And what I come to find out is that he was being nice to everybody. He was being nice to his customers, but he wasn't getting the results he was looking for.
Right.
And I said, therein lies the problem. You're being nice, right? Being nice usually comes with an expectation for something in return.
Sure.
Right? I'd be nice to that person, they'll be nice to me. You know, being kind, right, is serving someone because you're convicted to do so.
Yeah.
Not because you have an expectation
Regardless.
of something out of it, right? So it's like when you take that approach and you're kind with everybody, and it's just you have the kind of natural ability to just kind of build relationships.
Right.
And I imagine that person probably referred a few of his friends to you too.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I've had people years later use me as a reference. I was their car salesman. They used me a reference on the next car they bought from somebody else because I was no longer there anymore. It made that big of an impact on somebody. They're like, Mike was a good guy. He'll tell you that I'm a good guy, right? And he used me as a reference on their car before. But you're be kind, right? Like there's three things that the way that I've decided at a point in my life to live my life every day, right? And it's be patient, be kind, and have grace, right? Those three things. If you're patient with people, that's going to serve you well, right? I think now in our instant gratification society where we expect everything immediately, we can get frustrated with people, and things can go sideways when you lose your patience with people. Whether that's your kid, you said you have 3 kids, I have 2 kids, a 3-year-old and a 7-year-old. If dad's patient, they love me. When dad's not patient, just the whole environment's not good, right? So to be patient first, be kind, like you said. It's just, regardless of any expectation, be kind. It's contagious, right?
Well, it's a real intent to serve.
Correct.
It's not because you're getting paid to do so.
Right.
It's because you've chosen that's the way you're going to operate your business.
Right. It's the lady behind the counter at the gas station. You have 0 to gain in return. You are just trying to be kind, right?
Yep.
And the other thing is to have grace, right? I don't know about you, me personally. I couldn't tell you how many mistakes I've made. I can't tell you how many screw ups I've made, how many people I've probably hurt by doing things that I didn't intend to do. I needed a lot of grace in my life, and I got a lot of grace, thankfully, right? And
That's
I think
awesome.
I'm obliged to give that in return to people. So I think when you interact with people and to help them even when they don't deserve it, is it goes a long way. And I think when you live your life like that, be patient, be kind, and have grace, it goes a long way, and it can really make a positive impact on the world, on a business, on your relationships with everybody. It's just kind of my credo, so to speak.
Well, I think that's a key to, I look for patterns. I love identifying patterns, right? I think that's why I love doing marketing, because I'm just always looking for patterns within the marketing. I look for patterns in entrepreneurs. And I'll tell you, those 3 things that you just said there is a very consistent pattern that I see in some of the most successful people out there.
Yeah.
And, as the salespeople that are out there watching and listening to this, we really have to get back to this space where they are operating their own business.
Yeah, entrepreneurs,
right? When I first, it's funny, I don't know how it changed over time or something like that, but when I first when I got into the business, I'm sure when you got into the business too, it's like I was just renting a desk.
That's it.
In my head, that's all it was. It was a barber shop, and I'm just renting a desk, and they got a product. But this was my business.
Absolutely.
These were my clients, so my approach to them was all long-term. And the way
I had
treated them
manila
was fun.
folders, man. I mean, I can remember I had a rolling file cabinet with manila folders, and every person that I talked to, I had their folder. And I would call people. This is before CRMs. I mean, I feel old as heck when I'm talking about this right now. But I had my Outlook was just recently out, Microsoft Outlook, and I would just have move the dates along on when I would call people. That was my CRM.
I think one of the biggest keys to my success before the CRM, it was I did an action, I scheduled an action. That was just.
Well, it goes back to do what
simple.
you say you're going to do, right? So the funny thing is, because I used Outlook, when I set an appointment for somebody and they showed up, I was waiting for them. I'd already reviewed their file. I knew they were going to come in. I had the car that they wanted to actually drive pulled up, ready for a test drive. That is, to this day, very few people do that. It sounds crazy.
I did the same thing, and I remember I had a sales manager that definitely not in the business anymore, obvious reasons. But I would pull the car up, and he would get upset with me. You're taking up a parking spot. I'm like, well, I don't care. And then on just a white piece of paper, I wrote the customer's name, John Smith or whatever, Jane Doe, whatever it is, and I'd stick it in the dash.
Right.
And boy, did everybody hate when I did that. I got serious pushback from my dealership and other employees when I did that. And in the beginning, I wasn't sure what it was. Of course, over time, I realized what it was. They were just straight up jealous.
Yeah, they're like, shoot, I should have came up with that.
You're executing service.
Right. Substantially better than anybody else. It's kind of the union mentality, right? Of you're like, hey man, if you're working hard, you're setting the bar too high.
Oh,
we're
yeah. That's
happy.
exactly
We're
what-
happy
yeah.
selling 8 cars a month. You're selling 15. You're making us look bad.
Dumb it down a little bit.
Right. Yeah. So I know that's true, but that's customer service. It's just do what you say you're going to do. I often hear the term, under promise and over deliver,
Yeah.
and that's a good mentality, right? But it's like just promise and deliver. Just do it.
Yeah,
Like,
it's
that's why I love
good
Nike.
mental mentality, but it's not something you actually want to do. Like, you
Right.
just-
It's so funny. It's like if you say you're going to be someplace, be there and be there in time. If you say you're going to do something, do it. It seems like this foreign concept to people because we're so used to not doing this now
Yes.
and not getting when people have any kind of service, right? Just especially in the car business right now, we're used to that. And it's like when I said, you've been to thousands of dealerships probably. I've been to thousands of
Yep.
dealerships probably. The amount of times that you would go to a dealership and somebody would have the car that the customer was looking for, waiting for them to test drive. This sounds like a basic thing, right?
Little things, man.
It's all the little things that add up to success. Yeah.
But I think for any salesperson out there that's watching or listening, to embrace the little things, you need to understand that you're operating your own business.
100%.
And I don't, like I said, I don't know when that changed. Have you noticed that change too?
I have.
Like when you walk in, there's still some of the older guys there that are still on there that I'm renting my desk mentality. But I'm watching a lot of these new salespeople get into the business, and that is not in them. It doesn't seem to be in their DNA. I don't know, maybe it's because we're not training on it.
I
Or,
call it sales entitlement, right?
Okay, yeah.
Here's what it is, and I call it sales entitlement. It's not only the person's fault. And I think everybody, when they hear entitled, they think, oh, millennials, millennials are entitled. It's like, no, that's not what I mean. No, I mean, some of the sharpest, hardest working, most entrepreneurial people I know are millennials, right?
Yep.
And some of the most successful billionaires in our country right now are millennials, right?
Good point.
But when you look at it, the entitlement comes from the fact that we set the wrong expectations for people, right? So when we hire people, we're trying to hire bodies, flood the floor, right? You've heard that before, right? We're just trying to get butts in seats, and all the ads say, uncapped income potential, $100,000 a year job, all these things to get people to come here, but they don't tell you that it's a $40,000 a year job today. And then maybe it's a $65,000, and then maybe it's $85,000, right? And it's all on you, right? But those conversations aren't had, so we have entitlement, right? And I think back in the day, and I got a chance to meet a dealer from Rockford, Illinois. This was a decade ago. I was a much younger man, but he got back from World War II, and this guy's a wildly successful guy. Both of his sons went on to be successful dealers and entrepreneurs, and they're millionaires as well. So this guy instilled some good DNA, right? But he said, my first job selling cars, right, was Studebakers. And he said, when I showed up to my job, just got back from World War II, got married, had to find a job. He said, the dealer tells me this. He goes, you see this building? This is mine. See these cars? These are mine. You see these customers? These are mine. He goes, you go find your own customers. And he said he had to drive around rural Illinois, door to door in a Studebaker, demoing customers door to door to win their business, because anybody that came on the lot, he wasn't allowed to sell.
So this has been early 50s?
Yeah, this is 40s. This is
40,
late 40s.
So okay.
So when you think about that's your business, door to door, and this guy became a wildly successful guy because he's like, man, I have to start from the bottom and grind hard. And I think there's a lot to that of when you set the expectation, you're going to get the right person for the job. Now, the problem is that we all want immediate gratification. So we're like, hey, can you talk on the phone? Do you look halfway presentable? Can you buy some dress shoes? Great, you can sell cars, right?
That seems to be the requirement now these days.
Yeah, you can breathe and you can, buy a pair of dress
shoes. Can you wear a
shoes.
suit
Yeah.
and do you have a pulse? Okay.
Yeah, there you go, right? And so that's the problem is, right, we don't take the job as seriously as it is. And when it's like, when you look at all the stats, and it's great, we're at NADA where we've got all these studies and all these different things, and you can hear about, how much the dealer spends on average for a lead, right?
Yep.
And for me, when I was on the retail side, what really made me want to instill into everybody was how important each customer interaction was. Not just the customer that came in, each interaction, whether you're in the BDC.
Cost of the interaction, just
it's like, if I spent $400, if you looked at it like this, like literally, if I spent $400 to get this guy to call me, email me, text me, chat with me, right? And that's mismanaged, it is like somebody took $400 bills and burned them in front of your face.
Yeah.
And if they did that, you would be pissed. However, we don't look at it the same way. It's like, you know what, we're busy. We sold 400 cars last month, so we burned through 200 leads. It's like, there's so much money laying on the floor.
We're the only industry out there, and I find what it is that we spend more time talking about what we did and what we accomplished, not what we could have done, what we could have accomplished.
Right.
I mean, I was talking to a gentleman this morning. We're the only industry out there that accepts a batting average of 250.
Right.
And we're like, yeah, we're good with that. But you wouldn't be playing ball. I don't know if you follow
Right.
baseball.
Absolutely,
well.
yeah.
You baseball fan?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, big time.
Like, even if you're batting 350, it's still not, But I
Yeah.
mean, you think about those athletes. Really, we should really adopt that type of mentality. We are a professional. They're a professional. We have to take a professional approach to what we do.
Right.
Even a guy that's out there that's batting over 400 right now is still spending time at the gym, on the field, looking to how he's going to do. Yeah, exactly. It was all intentional to get to that point, and he's looking at how he's going to get to that next.
So this is what I laugh about, and a lot of this comes from the fact that we're so overwhelmed in the car business, and I have a lot of empathy because, like I said, I didn't see my daughter for the first year of her life. I worked so much in retail, right? Like there's so much to do every day. There's so many fires going on, and you're running a franchise dealership. You've got to be good at new cars, used cars, F&I, parts, service. Maybe you have a body shop, right?
Yeah.
Like you have to be good at a lot of stuff, and you constantly have fires going on, right? So it's easy to get distracted. That goes back to the plan, right? Like having the goal, having the plan, having a vision of how to get there is like, you need to then be able to delegate to people to say, like, how important is it to train every day? Like you think about like if, I don't care who you're a fan of, we'll just use any NFL football team, right?
Sure.
If they never practiced, if they just showed up every Sunday and played, they'd be awful.
Be watching.
No, they'd be awful. It'd be a hobby, right?
Yeah.
And I think too many people treat the job like it's a hobby, not like it's a profession, right? So a hobby is you show up, you do it, whatever. You know what? Like if I were to get onto a backyard football league with a bunch of guys that were over 30, right? Like that's what would happen. We're all busy. We all do other stuff, and we show up, and then we do this thing for an hour every, Sunday, whatever it is, right? People treat their job, their career, how they feed their family for the rest of their lives as a hobby. And they're not obsessive about getting great at it. And it's like we're jealous and envious of wildly successful people, especially athletes. And it's like, well, why did they get to where they're at? Not accidentally.
No, they didn't wake up one day. LeBron didn't wake up one day and all of a sudden just was able to.
I'm just accidentally good. It's
I'm
they're
just the best. Well, I don't know. They're physically maybe.
He's gifted in some ways. Yeah, I know, absolutely.
But still, right?
But like there's folks in our industry that are gifted with just human interaction, right? So that's a gift as well. There's people that are amazing athletes that couldn't, finish a sentence, right? Yeah. But like everybody has their own unique gift, right? And it's up to you to cultivate it and do something with it. And I think we have to have that mentality of like, how do I get obsessive about being excellent at what I do? And that's where the success comes, right? And I think
that's where I see that I need to see the training, but I'm not seeing enough training there. It's like, it's like I'm looking at digital retailing, and it scares me a little bit. Not because of what the product is. I'm all for what the software is and what the tool is able to do, but I'm looking at digital retailing, and I see dealers. In fact, I've even heard them use this, and they think of it as like those the kiosk stations at McDonald's.
Right.
That's what they think it is.
But a lot of people still don't even use those.
Yes, I know, that's the best part.
Line of 20 people and the kiosks are sitting open.
Like they're like, oh, I can get this tool, and then what I don't really need is I don't really necessarily need salespeople anymore. I can just hire clerks.
Right.
There's a lot of clerks in our industry right now.
Sure. This is true. But I think it seems like the obvious problem, but we go back to the people don't want to buy their own car. Right? They don't. And when you think about if you've ever went through to buy a car in Carvana, which I have before, there's still human interaction. Yeah. It's not Amazon. It's not, right? No. And even the delivery experience. Let's just say that Carvana, you did everything online and the car shows up in your driveway, right? Car shows up in your driveway and the guy's a jerk. He's smoking a cigarette. Your paperwork's a mess and it took 2 hours to do that. They'd have horrible reviews and a lot of people wouldn't want to buy cars on Carvana. Yep. It's still a customer service and an experience. It's an experience. People want a good experience. They want to buy a car, they want to buy a car that they want, that meets their needs, that meets their budget, and they want to do it quickly and efficiently, right? That's it. So,
well, speaking of experience, because I've had recently, the last couple months, about half a dozen or so salespeople reach out to me, and and unlike yourself, I keep myself really available. Right. Like, I mean, you DM me, I'm going to DM you back. Yeah. And their dealership doesn't seem to want to define an experience. They're okay with maintaining this, what I call full belly syndrome.
Sure.
Where they're just like, I'm happy right now. I don't really need to do anything else. Yep. But the salesperson is a little hungry. And what advice would you give to a salesperson who wants to carve out or develop out their own experience, even though they're working for a business that doesn't want to create an experience?
You can have the Mike experience. You can have the Jason experience, right? Like you can build your own brand. There's several people now that social media is out there. You're at a substantial advantage to broadcast to the world what your experience is all about and why you should buy a car from Mike, why you should buy a car from Jason, right?
Yeah.
And that experience can transfer. And now you've built brand equity in yourself where you're going to be recruited by other dealerships because they want the Mike experience or the Jason experience, and they want you to be contagious at their dealership and raise everybody else up. So it's really saying, I'm going to quit making friggin' excuses for why I'm not successful and blaming other people, and I'm going to be successful regardless, right? And you have to decide that I'm going to do it, period, end of story. That's it.
Now, where do you think someone should start? Like, what does it look like to start? I mean, I think back to, like, when I was, we both would bring the car up for the test drive, and then just little things like that. Or I would throw this write down the person's name and throw it into the car, but I'm talking to them, that doesn't seem to be clicking. Like, they're not heading that direction. I don't know why. It's like, maybe they're looking for an easy button or something. I don't know.
You have an awesome question, right? And this is why I think we miss customer experience so much in the car business. And I'm guilty of this myself, right? Is because when I was in retail, I tried to be good at this and I missed it myself because I'm in the weeds every day, right? But it's, if you haven't tried to buy a car yourself, if you're a car salesman, right? And you haven't tried to buy a car yourself, go through and experience it. Talk to 5 different dealerships and see what the pain's like, and then try to solve those problems that you yourself went through, right? Yeah. And that's why it's great when you talk to consultants or different people that work with dealers across the country, is that you get all these different perspectives, but I think until you go through it yourself, you don't really feel the pain, right? And so, like, I think for a salesperson that wants to define what does my experience look like, go through and try to buy a car yourself, and then just take notes, and then fix those things, and then define it, and then get on social media and talk to everybody about it. Tell them what the Mike experience is about. Let them know about your dealership. And I think you've heard of El Patron before, right? Yeah, big on social media.
Yeah, we're hanging later today.
Right. So he did an excellent job of defining like what they're all about, and I think he kind of created a blueprint.
He went even a little farther. He just defined who he was as an individual.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's like either knowingly or unknowingly, what he was doing there was he was documenting, and so people had the opportunity to follow along with his passions, not passion, right? Right. I mean, only half of his content's about the dealership. The other half is about family, working out, and so it's. I'm telling a lot of these new salespeople, when they start developing on a brand, they start developing on an experience. The experience is what you do professionally. All right. Your brand is what you're passionate about. Yeah. And I don't care if your brand, look, if you're passionate about grape snow cones and Star Wars, then that is you. All right.
How did you know what my brand was?
Wait, do you like stand up? Did I hit it? Grape snow cones and Star Wars?
My lapel pin on my sport coat says "I know" when it's Han Solo.
Okay, so what do you all right, now since I know this, I have to ask you. Yeah. All right, thoughts and opinions on Baby Yoda?
So the Mandalorian as a whole show was super cool. I think everybody was kind of wondering, at least before you started reading blogs and stuff, like, is this Yoda as a kid? What is this? I don't think it was like defined clearly enough. But like, I'm a Star Wars traditionalist a bit too, right? So like the original 3 are my favorite. So I think it's kind of cool, but it's not my thing.
No, okay. No. I was thinking it was kind of like maybe kind of it's a cute little like furry. I don't know, like I just remember those little like dolls that were really popular with the kids. I'm like maybe it's trying to bring in a new audience. Like obviously there was I think there was actually a strategy behind it.
I want to say this because and I just went to Disney World last week and I took my son to the Star Wars.
That. Oh my god! It looked like you used that so much fun.
I was like 7 years old myself the whole time. It was awesome.
Did you buy yourself a lightsaber?
Oh, 100%. I had the green one, he had the blue one, and then we had to get little sister got a red one because she's the bad guy. So that's how we had to do it.
Let's talk about Disney real quick because we got a few more minutes before we stop. 3 takeaways. Yeah. What were like?
I mean, so this is great. So I think the customer experience piece is Disney World, right? It is. You're the customer. It's an experience. Yes. The whole thing is an experience, and I think
100% for the customer.
It is, and they've gotten progressively better over time. So they're good about constantly, even though they're a multi-billion-dollar, wildly globally successful organization, they're always figuring out how to get better, right? And I thought about it when I was waiting in this line to go, drive the Millennium Falcon with my son, right? Even the line was so engaging the whole time, was all this different stuff and things moving. So like the painful experience, which they probably have a bunch of surveys and they talk to people, is like, how was your Disney World experience 1 out of 10?
I know exactly what you're
It's
talking
an 8.
about. It's really cool.
And then they're like, what's the gap? And they always try to close the gap. Well, it's waiting on these lines. So they say, okay, great, you've got the fast pass.
Yeah.
Now we've got to engage people while they're in line, even if they've got the fast pass. So they try to constantly close the gap. So I think it's the obsessiveness about finding perfection with the customer experience is like my top number one takeaway was that.
And I think that's a good point. I mean, think of how much money they would have saved if they don't create this kind of this pre-experience within the line, right? I mean, I know what you're talking about. There's bunch of animatronics. There's all kinds of, like, you almost kind of walk through a little storyline up until you actually get to it. I mean, they probably would have saved an insane amount of money, but that would have been in the best interest of the customers. And I think that's a good point because, there's these monster dealer groups out there that I talk to, and they're like, well, I don't know, Jay, you don't know how hard it is for me to change. And I'm like, really? Because, look at Disney, multi-billion-dollar company. 100 times more, 1,000 times more employees than you do, and they make a change like that. And the reason they're able to make a change like that is because all the way from the top down, the customer is at the center.
Right. No, it's true. And that has to be a culture thing, right? And there's quotes all over Disney World. This goes back to the clear vision, is Walt Disney's vision, and his quotes are all over there to reinforce with not only employees but customers about what they're all about, right? And I think that's important. Other big takeaway was there's multiple buyers in every transaction. And this is kind of a unique thing to think about when you think about Disney, right? But and it ties into the Star Wars thing, is that you would survey people probably and say, how was your experience at Disney, right? And you'd ask the kids and they'd say it was the greatest thing ever. You'd ask mom, she'd say, oh, it was awesome because she's compassionate, love the kids. You'd ask dad, he'd say, it sucked. It was hot. I waited in a line. I don't care about princesses. I don't care about Minnie Mouse. It sucked, right? Yeah. Well, now you get dad, who, if you were to survey everybody now, kids said it was awesome, mom said it was pretty cool, and dad was like, this was the best 3 days of my life because we went to Star Wars. Yep. And I had a riot. So it's like, you've got to cater it to everybody. And I think when we're thinking
breaking it down to the audience.
Absolutely. Right? The very specific audience, and to realize that while there may be one person writing the check to buy the car in our world, right, there's multiple influencers in there, right? And I think if you really think about, when you sold cars or some of the best salespeople you've met, you think about the interaction at the desk, and you think about the people that have things there to engage the kids. That it's not just the playroom in the other room, but it's the guy that keeps the candy there, and the kids are happy about that, right? And it's the guy that talks to the wife as much as he talks to the husband. And you think about the bad experiences where it's like the guy that doesn't act like the kids are there, lets them just go off the rails the whole time, only talks to the husband, not the wife, because he assumes he's the one making the decision. So it's like, when you think about the experience for everybody and realize that there's multiple buyers, right? When you're doing a demo of the car and you show the kids that, look, there's a plug right here, your USB plug, so you can plug in your iPad. And they're like, oh, Dad, I love that Expedition because it has the plugs in the back for my iPad. Like,
that's what he cares about.
Now you've got multiple people that are influencers of the decision that help make it, you, right? Yeah. Dad, I like the guy with the candy. We should buy the car from the guy with the candy, right? Because if you go to that other store and it's a wreck for the wife or for the kids and you're the guy buying the car, it's like it's common sense stuff, but it's not. It's little stuff.
We do it at the dealership. I think there's a fair amount of dealerships that are pretty good at presenting to an audience. I think the better presenters are good at identifying that there's multiple people within the audience, so they do have to add that, showing the kids the DVD screens, showing mom how easy it is to use, so you don't have to lean backwards and push a button. It's just literally just hit the button up here, so it's like engaging everyone. But then I think about our marketing efforts. And this is where I start to kick in, and this is where I get really, really vocal because it pisses me off. Sure. Is that we stick a single ad out there, or a single message,
one person,
and we're just like, this is good enough. Like, let me just check the proverbial box that I actually did my marketing, and like one piece of creative, one message is going to be good for every single person that's consuming.
So I'll tell you, this is a great point, because this is my third takeaway from Disney, is that amazing marketing trumps almost everything else. Is that what got me to go to Disney last weekend was the fact that I'm going to NADA this weekend. And NADA happened to fall on January, and I'm typically never gone on the weekends from my family. That's my sacred time of my family. But I knew I had to be gone this weekend, right? They did an ad, and it was an ad of a guy on his phone like this, and he's watching a video of a little girl at Disney hugging Minnie Mouse, and then it zooms out, and it's a girl who's probably a late teen, and she's putting on a sweatshirt, and she goes, you're going to miss me, Dad. And he's like, not even going to notice you're gone. And then it said, like, they're only little once. And I was like, I thought about missing my daughter's first year of her life.
Right
oh, my God. And so then I think about my little girl. I'm like, I've got to go to Disney now. I have to go right now. And so we literally booked a last-minute trip to Disney because it, like, hit me. And I'm like, they're only little once. And I'm gone all the time. I work all the time. I've got to go now. And it's like, just amazing, dead nut, spot-on marketing. It just makes, there's still, emotion is a lot of what we do as human beings, right?
Well, and that's so key with marketing, right? If we can evoke an emotion in our marketing efforts, their studies show that our brain's ability to recall that information is 4,000 times stronger than if there was no emotion at all.
Right.
We just drive by this billboard, nothing.
Right.
My ability to recall it, very, very, very slim, right? But if you made me laugh, or you pulled at my heartstrings, in this case, that's what happened.
Oh my God.
Right?
You teared up when I told the story.
I know. I'm like, it's perfect. Like, actually, the funny thing is, now I'm hearing you say it. I'm like, oh crap.
I need to go to Disney too,
I
right?
think I need to go to Disney. That's perfect marketing. You consumed a story. That story allowed you to take action. All right. Now you share that story. It's perpetual. Right. Like, it is just, and I'm sure you're not the only person that's.
I'm shared it with a bunch of people.
Exactly. Right. And I'm sure there's probably a handful of those people now, including myself, that's going.
I'm gonna go drop, several $1,000s on a Disney trip.
Yeah,
I didn't plan on it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But that's the power of creating messages specific to that audience. People think I'm crazy when I run ads for cars towards teenagers. Like, they think I'm nuts. I'm doing that. They're like, "What? They're not gonna buy."
If you have a teenager, you don't want an irate teenager, right? And if they want something, they're going to be a pretty heavy influencer, right?
Yeah. Like, they don't realize the
I think we get cynical, right? So we get very cynical in our business and think, like, it's recency. So that last guy that grinded you down on payment, and that whatever it is, right? You've got this recent experience and you get cynical and you're like, people only care about the cheapest price. People only care about the cheapest payment. It's like, it's just not true, right? Or we'd all be driving cheap economy cars, right? We wouldn't be like, people care about stature. No, I would have went to Wally World, right?
Exactly.
Just this BS, cheap, shitty experience, because I'm like, well, the kids just want to go on a roller coaster and they want to see a stuffed animal walking around. Like, no, that's not what they want, right? It's very specific, and you're willing to pay a premium. And I even posted a couple times on this of, like, the Star Wars Coke bottle, right? That has, isn't it? I paid $4 for 10 ounces of Coke.
It's perception of value.
Right, of Coca-Cola.
You perceive the value there.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, that's it. I did. And then my daughter paid like $6 for a goofy water bottle, like a regular disposable water bottle, not a reusable one. It was $6. She, Daddy, I want Goofy. And I'm like, they're only little once. And it all circles back around. I'm like, I gotta get her the Goofy water bottle.
And you got a picture. I guarantee you got a picture of the water
I do, yeah, 100%. Yeah, absolutely. So I think some really good takeaways. And I think it's like, no matter where you're at, no matter what you're doing, if you're looking for lessons to learn and take away to apply your business, you're always going to find them, right? So I went there with the intention of, like, okay, these guys run a wildly successful enterprise, right? I know I'm going to be able to learn a ton from these guys, and I did. But you got to be aware of it. You got to look for it. You
got to be open to it. And I do it even every single day. It's one of the things, like, I'll go into, we went to a place the other day to get tacos. And, like, I just started picking up all these little things. I'm like, why they're doing this, why they're moving that over there. It's just, it is. And I think as a business owner and, even as a salesperson, you're running your own business, these are the things you have to look at.
Right.
It's these little things that make these huge impacts.
Right.
Here's what I find really kind of interesting is, when people find out that we're in the automotive industry, you're at a dinner party. Right. They immediately want to tell you the story about them buying their car.
Sure,
right.
Yeah.
Out of all the dinner parties I've been to, no one has ever once told me that they bought the $250 biweekly car.
Yeah, no, never.
Have you ever heard that?
Never.
It
Nobody talks
has
about
not
that.
happened yet.
Nobody's
right?
ever told you that.
Like
yeah.
they'll tell me they bought the car, and then I'll ask them, why they bought the car. Then I'll ask them why they bought the car from the dealership.
Right.
And it's never one big thing.
Right.
It was something little that the salesperson did, or it was something little that the car had. It was always the little things that had these huge impacts on people.
Right. You're right.
So there's some great takeaways, man. This was a lot of fun.
Yeah, I had a riot, dude. That was awesome.
was
That was
awesome.
so much fun. Yeah. Very cool.